Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Dropping the Gloves. Thanks for joining us here. We got end of June, Tim. How's it going over there?
It's good. Yeah, it's a weird feeling. This is my last episode. I'll save some thoughts for the end, but it's very strange coming in and for all the time that we've been together for this to be the last one.
Yeah, it's moving on. The show will continue, but Tim's leaving, so it's definitely bittersweet. Tim was pumping me up before the episode, saying, "Be happy, be happy." So I'm going to do my best. But yeah, bear with me. I might break down in tears. Potentially. But we're moving on. There's lots to talk about, Tim. So we have to soldier on with this episode because the hockey world does not stop just because you're abandoning me. And we have to talk about what's happening. We got the draft tonight. Excuse me, we had the draft two nights ago. We got free agency starting tomorrow. So the hockey world is in full swing and action is happening. But let's just go over the draft because holy hell, we did the Bleacher Report live stream. Talk about a marathon. Talk about just 4.5, almost 5 hours of continuous draft. Not even continuous. Lots of lulls, lots of really not great surprises, but it was a lot of fun. What did you think, Tim, of the draft overall?
Yeah, I mean, we had a great time. Bleacher Report was awesome. We were online about 6:30. We didn't finish till 11:15. And it's funny because Julia was out all night, and I came out finally, and at one point she snuck me a glass of water because I hadn't left my desk in 4 hours. And I came out, and she was like, "Hey, Levi pooped on the carpet. We got to go deal with that now." And then he had to go again at 3 a.m, and it was a long night. But the crazy thing is with the draft, I mean, good players. I thought parts of the presentation were very cool. I liked the whole Zoom thing, but all anyone's talking about that night and the next morning, it's not the players, it's not the trades, it's the format and it's the length. All anyone's talking about is way too long, way too long. The NBA did their entire first round a couple nights earlier in 2 hours.
Yep.
And it's I kind of liken this. I use this example somewhere. Someone I was texting. It's like the league is brand new, and they're like, "Hey, we're working through the kinks. Like, bear with us. You know, we're trying to figure this out for the first time, even though it's an institution that's over 100 years old." And I get they try new stuff all the time, but like, you've got to have this buttoned up by now. It felt like all these weird like D-list celebrities taking their time. The clock meant nothing. It was very frustrating. But the players were cool, and I thought there were some really, really neat highlights and a lot of franchises that are reinvigorated based on the players they selected.
Well, and just going back to the time, they even tried to streamline it this year without having any of the teams in building. And they thought that might make it quicker, but it was longer. It was absolutely longer. It was just an arduous 4.5, 5 hours for everybody involved. And thank goodness most of you listening didn't stay up and watch the whole thing. You just get your one team and away you go. Oh gosh, my earbuds kept going out of power. So there was times where I was like charging one, not charging the other one. And my old library headphones wouldn't work, and I was just a disaster. I was trying to sneak beers. They wouldn't let me drink it out of a red Solo cup. They said, "Oh, we don't want that." So I was just drinking them out of like a coffee cup, and it was just no commercials.
Even the TV guys, they get commercials. ESPN's getting commercials every 10 minutes. We had nothing. We just talked. We filled every second of air for almost 5 hours. We didn't.
It was incredible.
My legs were going numb. It was crazy. It was a good time, but man, that's a marathon.
Yeah, and I hope you guys enjoyed it because we did our damnedest. But anyways, moving on. There's been some action since the draft. But do you want to touch on results from the draft? Because there were some teams that absolutely knocked it out of the park and other teams that really not so much. Like Philadelphia Flyers, Danny Briere are trading up to get absolutely nobody. But then the New York Islanders, having those players fall into their lap at 16 and 17 was a complete win. But I don't know if we need to get into the specifics, Tim. Your call.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Islanders nailed it. They their home run first overall pick, and then having those guys fall to them at 16 and 17, Atchison and Eklund, was just crazy. I don't think anyone anticipated that, and they had teams trying to trade up for those picks because those guys just kept falling. So they have to be thrilled. I didn't love the draft overall for the Flyers for the reason you mentioned, but I did like who they took with their seventh pick or something, sixth pick, that big power forward. I thought that was good. I think
Did they get Caleb Martin? I think it was.
No, it was Portman or something like that. One of those other names.
Yep.
But the Penguins, I think, had the worst trade. Worst picks, like trading up to get a guy that probably wasn't going to be drafted until the third round. Like, there was some weird Kyle Dubas stuff going on there.
Yeah, they traded up to get Bill Zonin. They drafted Will Horkoff at 24. They got Benjamin Kindle at 11. It was just every Kyle Dubas play was a little bit of a stretch. And then, of course, the Chicago Blackhawks, or no, sorry, the Buffalo Sabres drafting Radim Murtik at 9 was a little bit of a stretch. There was some weird picks throughout the draft where I just was scratching my head. Obviously, Vern Fiddler's son drops to the second round, unfortunately, so he probably had the biggest draft day drop I've ever seen. And the big winner for me, other than the New York Islanders, was the Bruins. I think James Higgins is going to be a terrific first line center. For him to drop, even he was projected to be a number 1 overall pick at the beginning of the season. You drop to 7. That's quite the drop. So I like the Bruins. I like the Islanders. I think the San Jose Sharks with Michael Misa. He is the most skilled player in the draft. Getting him at number 2, they really kind of came away looking pretty good there. But I don't know. We could go on and on about the draft. Let's move on because my favorite team, the Detroit Red Wings, made a trade. They traded for John Gibson from the Anaheim Ducks, and such a strange trade because the Anaheim Ducks, a very strange team. Traded Trevor Zegras. You think they're going to make a move in the draft, and they did draft some decent players. They get Roger McQueen, the big, powerful forward, going to be a huge center and a big piece of this team for years to come. But other than that, I don't think they did much. But they have this great asset in John Gibson. You think, okay, here we go. There's a lot of teams that need goaltending help, especially contenders. We can dangle this carrot. There's not a lot of goaltenders in free agency. What can we do? And they trade him to the Detroit Red Wings. And they get a good return. Don't get me wrong. I think they didn't do too bad. You get Peter Mrazek, who will be a stopgap potentially in Anaheim, and you get a 4th and a 2nd. But boy, oh boy, I don't compliment Steve Yzerman much. I think this is a huge win for him. I think he goes out and gets him for next to nothing. A 4th and a 2nd in Peter Mrazek. Mrazek was garbage last year. He was a 3rd stringer, for Pete's sake. He didn't dress for the majority of the games. And you get John Gibson, who makes them remarkably better. What they use 5 goaltenders, it says here, Tim, last season. They were awful. They needed to address this situation. I think Steve Yzerman went out and got the best goalie available by far. If I'm Stan Bowman and I'm Connor McDavid and I'm sitting here looking what the Red Wings got for John Gibson, I'm banging my head against the wall if I'm Connor McDavid. I know there's cap implications, this, that, and the other thing. You can make this work. And John Gibson's available. You have to go and get him. I can't roll into the season again with Picard and Skinner. That's just can't happen for the 7th consecutive season I've been in the NHL where I don't have an NHL caliber goalie between the pipes. But yeah, I think Steve Yzerman, I don't give him credit very often because he doesn't merit it. It was a great trade by him. Don't you think?
It was a great trade, and we talked about this on the stream the other night. I didn't realize that Gibson's only 31 years old. Like I think about him as being much older, 34 or something. So he's got some good hockey left in him, and this carrot that's been dangled by the Anaheim Ducks for what feels like half a decade now, where it's like, okay, he's a good goalie, potentially elite goalie at certain parts of his career, one of the best in the league for stretches at a time on a bad team, and you put him on a good team of like Toronto, like Edmonton, like all the other teams that have needed goalies over the last couple of years, Ottawa. What could he do? And could he move the needle for them? And it finally happens. And I think you're right that teams like Edmonton should have been like, man, why didn't we make that move? And Stuart Skinner's a whole other thing. But yeah, credit to Yzerman for getting him. I think, to get the best goalie in the market by far, like you said, without giving up a prospect, without giving up a first rounder. And all of a sudden, you finally have this situation figured out, because one of the biggest questions for the Red Wings going into the summer was, who's our goalie next year? Is it Mrazek? Is it, all the other guys, Lyon? Talbot. Who am I blanking on here? Talbot. Yeah. So it's like, who's our guy? Finally, we had that question answered.
Yeah. And then he wasn't done there. He goes out and he finds a sucker. A sucker is born every minute. And apparently in Minnesota, that one of those minutes was Billy Guerin, who, is usually a pretty solid GM. He's pretty hard negotiator with the players. He knows what talent looks like. He's obviously played in the NHL for years and years and years. I don't know if Steve Yzerman has something on him, but he gets Billy Guerin to take Vladimir Tarasenko off of his hands and his $4.5 million contract, and Billy Guerin takes the whole contract. So Steve Yzerman, in the span of 24 hours, gets his starting goaltender for the next 2 years in John Gibson, and then turns around and unloads Vladimir Tarasenko and his $4.5 million contract, a 33-year-old forward who is just, he isn't what he used to be. The Rangers brought him in a few years back for a playoff push. That didn't really work out. The Red Wings bring him in. It didn't work out. The Senators brought him in. It kind of worked out a little bit. The Panthers brought him in for the Stanley Cup run. He did pretty good in the playoffs. But in the regular season, he leaves a lot, to be wanted. And so he ships him off for absolutely nothing. I think he got a 5th rounder for him. So Steve Yzerman, I got to give it to him. It's hard for me to compliment this guy, but holy hell, does this mean, and I'm looking at the Red Wings roster, I'm looking at their cap space, they have a lot of flexibility now. They have over $20 million in cap space. They got a starter. Is this the precursor, Tim, in your eyes, for these Detroit Red Wings to start making moves? Because there's a lot to work with on this roster. I know they still got to re-sign Patrick Kane, and from all accounts, he will re-sign. He likes it there. He's just waiting for the dust to settle for free agency and the draft and all that stuff. But are they players for an Aaron Ekblad? Are they players for other players who could come out and help this roster? I haven't heard anything, but Steve Yzerman always keeps his cards close to the vest. He never lets anything leak. Is there something going on here in Detroit, Tim?
Well, they have tons of flexibility and options, and it's somewhere where there's not a lot of options available to them. We keep talking about how this is a pretty thin free agent class. It's a weird trade market. There are moves to be made, but unless you're in on Marner or a player and up there, there's not a lot of options available to you. So maybe there is a trade market that they're exploring, and I haven't heard them linked to Marner or really any of these other guys. But like you said, Yzerman plays it close, and if they can make that work, all of a sudden you think, okay, this kid's. If Marner's added to a team, you expect them to at least make the playoffs next year now, in addition to Gibson?
Oh, yeah. I would say absolutely. They were close this year, and you lose Tarasenko, who was a net negative. But yeah, you bring in Gibson. I think that's the biggest needle mover because Talbot, although he was good, I don't think his wins above replacement was that remarkable. Whereas you get a John Gibson, and his wins above replacement put him top tier in the NHL. I think he was around 12, 13 of all NHL goalies, and that's massive. You contrast that to Mrazek, who was on the negative side of things. So that's the biggest needle mover. I think they need to shore up that defense. That's why I think an Ekblad would be great. A Provorov, I know he's working out a contract with the Philadelphia Flyers. He would be really good on that team. Even getting a guy who did a lot in the playoffs, a Nate Schmidt, I think he would be great in Detroit. But are they a destination? I don't think so. I think if I'm a free agent, I'm kicking the tires on a lot of other teams. And when you look at this group of free agents, Tim, they're all vets. They've all made a lot of money. And they want to go somewhere where they can compete for a Stanley Cup. And in my eyes, I don't think that's Detroit just yet. But with a few, strategic moves, maybe in a couple years. I know it's crazy for me to be saying because I'm their biggest critic. But get a couple defensemen, then they might be get a guy like Philip Ronik, a guy like Jake Wallman. Those types of defensemen, I think, they'd be great in Detroit.
Would you rather have a Marner if you're Detroit or go get a couple of smaller pieces like Granlund and Besser or something like that?
Oh, I think the second. Yeah, I would take 2 pieces over Marner. I think, and this is the issue with Marner right now. He's so, and everybody's beat this drum to death. He's such a good player, but I don't think he's the type of player that's going to, I don't know, they got Dylan Larkin. They got DeBrincat. They got Lucas Raymond. They have, I don't know. They got David Perron. They have those types of players who are skilled puck movers, shifty with the puck. Though they don't have David Perron, excuse me. They have, those 3 guys who are the swift skating, shorter, smaller type players. I think you'd be better off getting those players, a Besser, a spot and shoot player. I don't know. But Marner's so good. He would get them to the playoffs, I agree. But is he going to do damage in the playoffs? With this group, no. I do think there is a spot where Marner where he does damage in the playoffs, not with Detroit, though.
Okay, well, let's talk about the next trade that happened this morning. The Nashville Predators acquired Nicholas Hague from the Vegas Golden Knights in exchange for Colton Sissons and Jeremy Lauzon. And right after the trade happened, Nicholas Hague signed a 4-year deal worth $5.5 million average annual value. He's a pretty good defenseman. He's a big left-handed guy. He's a big boy, 6'6", 245 pounds. Doesn't put up points, but he plays a pretty good defensive, physical game, which is something that Nashville obviously, values. And then in exchange, Lauzon, I think, is pretty good. He's physical, but Hague's a better version of him. And Sissons is a bottom 6 center. He's been there for his entire career. I didn't realize he played 600 or 700 games with the Nashville Predators. He was the guy that our old friend of the show from the Tennessean thought that was super overrated. In the right situation, he's a top 6 guy, but he's not. So what are your thoughts on this trade?
it doesn't make sense to me for the Nashville Predators. I don't like. Don't get me wrong. Nicholas Hague is a great defenseman for a bottom three pairing. I think that's where he lives. Like he's the 5'6" defenseman who kills penalties, but he's on the second kill unit. I don't think he's that impactful of a player. And then to turn around and sign him for 5.5 for 4 years, that's, I don't know. Am I missing something here? I've watched a lot of Nashville Predators hockey, and they were, a highly coveted team coming into this season. He never stood out for the Vegas Golden Knights, excuse me. And watching the Nashville Predators, they don't need a physical defenseman. They don't need a banger who can go in and clean house. I just don't know why they go out and get this guy. It doesn't make sense to me. Roman Yossi's 35 years old. He's aging. Brady Shea, you just signed him to a massive 8 years, $7 million contract. So bring in Hague to be, where does he fit? Like, where does he fit in this roster other than a number 5, Tim?
Yeah, maybe he's a low end number 4 or something, but then you also have to factor the whole left right thing. And I don't know how much in your experience teams value that, but all their defensemen are lefties. Yossi's a lefty, Shea's a lefty, Hague's a lefty, Oosterly's a lefty, Englund's a lefty. They have one right shot defenseman in Justin Barron, who's I think is maybe their 6th defenseman. So is that something that's going to hurt them when it comes to like setting up power play and all that sort of stuff?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And Hagee right now, if he plays on the right side, Nick, that's, I don't know, bigger guys, it's harder for them to go from backhand to forehand when you go D to D. It's just tough. So I don't get this move by Nashville, especially last year, and we'll get to this guy in a second, but they put Dante Fabro on waivers. Yeah. And he walks, and the Blue Jackets just re-signed him to a 4-year, $4.125 million contract. And Dante Fabro is better than Nicholas Hagee. Obviously he's not as physical, but as a defenseman, I'm taking Fabro all day long. So I don't know what Barry Trotz is doing. Like, you already have this team that struggles. You're trying to improve them, and you're bringing on this. And I love big guys, Tim. I love big guys, and I love the way he plays. But to me, I like Nicholas Hague at around $3 million. That's where I like to see him. He's just coming off a $2.29 million contract signed with the Vegas Golden Knights, and he doesn't scream offensive upside. His highest point total in a season is 17. And then he hovers around 12. Like that's his ceiling. You're going to get 3-4 goals and maybe 10 assists. And that was playing on a good Vegas team where he's playing every night. And he's giving the puck to all those high-end forwards. And he still only gets 12 points. And he's getting good minutes where he's playing like 15 to 20 minutes a game. Like, how many points is he going to get in Nashville? I don't understand this move. This to me, this could have waited, or you could have filled that 4-5 spot with a much cheaper player. Much, much cheaper player. I don't know. Barry Trotz.
I mean, for the Vegas Golden Knights, this was clearly a salary move where they're getting, 2 players who combine for a smaller salary than what Hague just signed, frees up all kinds of cap situation stuff for rumors that we're going to talk about. So one of the issues is that Colton Sissons is that realistically a third, or probably more realistically a 4th line center. Yeah. For a team that has Eichel, Hertl, Carlson, and Roy down the middle, seems like one of those guys might be on the move, which kind of brings us to our big rumor of the day, which is Mitch Marner to Vegas. This has been, talked about for weeks, and even goes back to last year with the Shea Theodore potential trade at last year's trade deadline. And the last couple of days going into the weekend, everyone, Dreger, Elliott, Frank, are all talking about there's a lot of smoke to Marner to Vegas. But according to Friedman, it's been going on for at least a year, going back to, like I said, last summer, the Leafs asked for Theodore. The trade was declined when the Leafs wanted Rantanen, Marner to Vegas. There was all this huge potential 2-3 team deal. And the Vegas approached the Leafs at the draft combine and told the Leafs if they make Marner's rights available, they're interested. That gives them the ability to sign him before other teams do, before the free agency hits on July 1st, which is tomorrow. And Vegas wants to do that. This talk, though, and this is where, everyone's kind of chattering here. If Marner goes to Vegas, the Leafs will go after Vegas for tampering unless Vegas makes the sign and trade with them. This is a lot of complicated technical stuff here, John. What am I trying to understand from this?
The tampering thing is so kind of unknown to me even. I know teams are not allowed to approach a player. They're not even allowed to get other players to approach a player or approach a GM. It happens all the time. And obviously, you mentioned if there's smoke, there's fire. Everybody and their brother knows that the Vegas Golden Knights want Mitch Marner. It's out there. How that got out there, why people know about it, I don't know. So if you're Kelly McCrimmon and you're tiptoeing around Mitch Marner's circle, if you're calling his agent, will he sign in Vegas? What is it going to take? And then you circle back and you go to Brad Trevili and you go, hey, I think Mitch, really would want to be in Vegas. I don't want to wait until July 1. What is it going to take to get him? That's tampering, because you're not allowed to do that. You can't talk to other players' representatives at all. Now, Kelly McCrimmon could say, well, I'm talking about other free agents. I'm talking about these players. I'm talking about players that I have who are represented by his agent. So there's ways to get around it. It's hard to prove tampering, but it happens all the time. Now, I'm sure players that know Mitch Marner, who have played on him, in the Four Nations, are calling him and saying, hey, what do you want? Where do you want to go? Do you want to play in Vegas? Should we make a trade for you? My ownership wants to know. My management wants to know. But I don't know. I don't know. If I'm Mitch Marner, do I really want to sign before free agency? Because I think he has a good idea of what teams want him. It's a very small list, I think, of teams that can afford him. But again, does it make sense for him to go to Vegas? Does he make this team a Stanley Cup contender? I don't know. I really don't. It's such a weird thing. But yeah, good for Vegas to go out there and try to swing the bat. And if they don't sign him, if he does go somewhere else, and the league has something that Vegas has done, they'll get hammered. There was a tampering case, I want to say last year or the year before, that a team got dinged on. I should have looked it up. But yeah, it's a real thing, and the teams should be more aware of it. But it's very rare that a team will call another team on it and say, okay, no, you're tampering. That shouldn't happen. I'm gonna report something, because it happens all the time. GMs and agents and players, it's such a small network. It happens every single day, every single offseason. So Toronto's just upset that Mitch is leaving, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, it happens all the time. But the other thing that Elliot Friedman said was that the league is itching to make an example out of somebody. So we could see something come from this. And the latest report just a few minutes ago said you can expect the Marner trade to happen this afternoon. They want to obviously get it done as soon as possible to give him the best chance of signing with him before July 1st, or at least having some good conversation before Marner can officially talk to other teams. Because he's going to have basically, 20 plus teams are going to be interested in him, and he's not going to take calls from all of them. He's got to have a short list and cities he doesn't want to live in, states he doesn't want to live in, teams he doesn't want to play for. But there's plenty that he does. So, and if it does go to Vegas, the expected contract is going to be a smaller one. It's not going to be this long term. It's going to be 4 years, around $12 million, which is way less than I would have thought.
Yeah, me too. I would have expected him. I've said 14 forever now, but I think that's a more realistic contract, $12 million, based on what this guy's done in his history. He's gotten 100 points once. He does nothing in the playoffs. He's not overly big. He's not going to give you anything else but a solid offensive player. So maybe reality's hitting him, and his agent has kicked the tires on teams, and he's slowly realizing, maybe the money's not out there. Maybe we should temper our expectations, but still, that's a good deal for him, because it puts him in a situation of the Vegas Golden Knights. Like I've said before, their long-term projections, Tim, in my eyes, are not that strong. They have a good team now. Their Stanley Cup window is absolutely now, but when you fast forward 3 years, and I think Mitch Marner is seeing this, it doesn't look too good. You got Stone will be 35. If Hurdle stays, if Karlsson stays, if Barbashev stays, all those guys will be 34, 35 years old with a lot of hockey under their belt. Not a very good team. So smart move by him. If he does go there for only 3 or 4 years, he'll be 32 and in the prime of his career still.
There's one more trade that just happened a couple of minutes ago. The Leafs acquired Matthias Maccelli for a draft pick. Yeah, and I'll just touch on him real quick. I've always liked him. I think he's a pretty good player. And you go back to look at his stats 2 seasons ago for the Arizona Coyotes, 49 points in 64 games. You think, okay, that's pretty good. This kid's young. Last year, 57 in 82 games. And then this past season, 18 in 55 games. He was playing through an injury. He missed 30 games with an injury. So he's an upside pick. But you can also see that this is like insurance. Like, they know Marner's gone. They're adding a skilled winger that'll play in the middle of 6 with some upside, and who's still young enough that you could see him, become a 60, 70-point player at some point if things work out.
Yeah, decent size, 6 foot, 180, 185, 200-pound player. But yeah, when you look at, and that's a thing with going to Toronto, he's still a young kid, like you said. If you put him with some talent, and he's able to skate with a Matthews or a Tavares or a Nylander or a Nyes, the point total will increase. You would have to think so. Better players, better opportunities, more points. So the upside for him is through the roof. And it's a great trade. I don't know why Utah is giving up on him so easily because he is under team control. He is a good player. And like you mentioned, the guy is he was almost a point per game guy when he was with the Coyotes. He obviously faltered this season, but boy, oh boy, to give up on him that quickly. I guess they have a lot of young players that they want to get some ice time to, and they know they'll be having to pay players pretty soon coming off their entry-level contracts. But yeah, Michelli is one of those guys who kind of came out of nowhere. He was a fourth-round pick back in 2019, and his first season, full season with Arizona was fantastic. Almost 50 points in 64 games. Like, that's a great first exposure for a terrible Arizona Coyotes teams 3 years ago. So that's a great pickup by Toronto. I think he fits in nicely with this team. They've always screamed for depth at a reasonable price. You don't have to pay a Scott Laughton. Max Domi makes a ton of money. Bobby McCann makes a lot of money. And this guy will be a reasonable $3 million contract, and they'll re-up him if he has a good season. So good play. Great trades. I think the original six so far, Detroit's looking good. I like Toronto, the moves they're making. They re-up Matthew Knies for a good long-term deal. That makes sense for both the team and the player. I think he could have got a lot more if he would have just taken some, qualifying offers from other teams. But yeah, great job by the Leafs and the Red Wings. I'm very impressed. Very, very impressed, Tim.
So we'll keep an eye on that because I feel like more trades could break just while we're recording the show. But you mentioned Knies. Let's talk about some of the signings that have come through. So he signed over the weekend, 6 years at $7.75 million. First, what was your gut reaction?
I thought it was great. Yeah, I figured he would have wanted more based on what he's done this year. I think he was a huge part of this team. But when you look at the history and when you compare him to the comparables, I think he deserves more. The only knock on him, and it's the knock on every single player for the Toronto Maple Leafs, is the output they have in the regular season does not translate to the playoffs. This guy got 60 points this year in 78 games. He was fantastic, and he just shuts it down in the playoffs. I know he got 5 goals, whatever. They were mostly in the first round. He just stunk in the second round, much like every other Toronto Maple Leafs player. So, and the same thing happened 2 years ago. He had 35 and 80 games played, then he gets to the playoffs, and he just disappears. Has 3 points. So, I don't know, that's a low-hanging fruit for the Leafs because everybody seems to shut it down for the Leafs in the playoffs. But yeah, 7.75 is comparisons. I think I would take him over every single one of these guys in that salary range. You got Jason Robertson, you got Svechnikov, you got Lindholm from Boston, you got Couturier in Philly. The only guy who I might be prone to take is a Cole Caulfield from Montreal, but they're two completely different players. And I love what Knies does. So yeah, a great contract, I think. 6 years, 7.75. Knies will still be in his prime and a UFA when the contract expires, but Toronto gets this guy for a really good number for the next 6 years to play alongside Matthews. So great job by both player and team.
Yeah, he's probably my favorite player on the Leafs, and he's a complimentary player, right? He's never going to drive a line, but he doesn't have to. He's going to be playing with Tavares or Nylander or Matthews, probably Matthews, and he's one of the few guys that always shows up in the playoffs. Like, he's just not just on the scoring sheet, but he's physical. Like, he's got that dog in him that the Leafs desperately need, and they recognize that. So I feel like he was probably, Marner's a better player, but I think this was their most important priority heading into this offseason. So getting him locked up is a huge win for them.
Yeah, they get Michelli, they get him, they get Tavares signed to a team-friendly deal. Then you move off of Marner. I think all in all, this team could be better prepared for the playoffs than they were last year. Even though they lose Mitch Marner, they'll have Stolarz back. So, and they're not done. They have $10 million in cap space. They will make some moves. So I don't know. The Leafs are always a threat. So it's no use talking about them until they get to the playoffs. But yeah, another signing will stay in Ontario. Claude Giroux re-signed with the Senators, only 1 year, which is a little strange for a guy of his ilk. Maybe he doesn't want to get locked into a team that doesn't maybe have a long-term Stanley Cup projection, but it's $2 million in base salary. A lot of the veterans are doing this with the potential, $750,000 in bonuses, 2.75 potential in bonuses. So I think the Sens needed to get this done. He was so good for them last year, and he's still very, very productive. Even though he's not getting the 25, 28 minutes a game, he's a good player. I think he's a good role model in that locker room. He's a calming presence, and he does a lot of things. He's great in the faceoff circle. So, again, a great contract for a veteran who wants to stay in a spot, but bonuses are there, and he has a chance to maybe get traded if they're not going to be in the playoffs. So, good for Steve Staios. I like this contract. Not crazy, which is kind of refreshing.
Yeah, he clearly loves it, and he loves that group of guys, and they love him. And, for everything that he brings in the locker room and experience and the leadership and all that, he's produced a lot more than I thought he would have these past couple of seasons, where you think of the miles and the age and everything, and he's still putting up really good points. He's still among the team leaders in points every single year. And if they return to the playoffs, which we talked about in our stream, I think we expect them to make the playoffs this year and next year. And until they prove us otherwise, I think it's going to be very important for that group.
And his longevity is incredible. Ever since he came to Ottawa, he's missed one game in 3 years. And he's 37 years old. So that's absolutely just remarkable for a guy of that age. And he doesn't shy away from the physical stuff. Yeah, he's small, but he doesn't not go into the corner. So good deal by Steve Staios to $2 million. That is an absolute bargain. All right, moving on. We talked about the Dante Fabro. He signed with the Blue Jackets. Good story from him. Drafted in the first round by Nashville, played a couple years there, just fell out of favor this season for whatever reason. Just didn't get any ice time, was a healthy scratch. They put him on waivers. Columbus scoops him up right away, and he played great. And then they just re-signed him to a 4-year, $4.125. And it just screams like, okay, if I'm Fabro and I'm sitting there in Nashville and I'm not playing and the team is atrocious, then all of a sudden I become a good hockey player when I go to Columbus. It just stories like that don't make sense to me. It just is a mismanagement of talent. And maybe a coach was down on him and he was in someone's doghouse and he didn't kiss the right ass and he just wasn't a team player to a certain coach. And then you just get in the doghouse and next thing you know, oh, I'm on waivers. Well, this guy's a good hockey player. He goes to Columbus and puts up, a point every 3 games. And he doesn't have to be a point getter. But he's just a solid right shot defenseman, which Nashville needs. You just mentioned all they have is Justin Bear, and Dante Fabro would be a great second D-pairing right shot defenseman, and he's going to be great in Columbus. 4.125 is a good number for him. He's going to eat up minutes, and Nashville, you shake your head. Like, what the hell are we doing? I'd rather have this guy than Nicholas Hague. So again, we're not GMs, but you shake your head at the moves when you kind of step back and you go, okay, wait, what happened? That's why I get so mad at Detroit. Like, oh, we need defensemen. Buddy, you gave away 3 or 4 good defensemen for nothing. You paid someone to take your guy away, so good for the Blue Jackets. I like this contract.
Another one that just came in a couple of minutes ago, the New York Islanders and Alexander Romanov are working on a deal. This is per Elliott, 8 years at 6.25. I think this is a pretty good deal. I think that's a good number for him. And I'm glad they didn't overpay for him. He's an underrated defenseman. And you don't notice it until you watch your team play the Islanders. And he's just everywhere. He's physical. He loves those hip checks. He loves tying guys up. And he'll score every once in a while. He's a good defenseman. That's a good number.
Yeah, they traded for him a couple years ago from the Montreal Canadiens, gave up a first rounder. So they needed to keep this guy, and they did it at a good cap pick. There was rumors going around that he was asking for $8-9 million, just like that Gavrikov from the LA Kings. And I like what GMs are doing. For the most part, they're getting the deals done, obviously, before July 1. But yeah, it's a great number for him. He's not an overly, points-producing defenseman, but he's a solid, stay-at-home, good puck-moving defenseman out of the zone. He's not going to jump in the rush and just go outrageous. But, you lock him in for 20, 25, 30 points a season, and he's just a good, solid defenseman. It's 6.25. Is that what he got? 6.125? It's a good number for him. And it's a good number for the team. It's a lot of money, but gosh, he's 25 years old. You can lock him in for 8 years on your back end. So great. I think it's a great deal. I'm glad I'm not seeing these crazy numbers. Even if Mitch Marner falls in at 12, I think that's smart. I thought with the cap rising, the limited amount of free agents, teams were just going to be taken to the cleaners. That's what I thought. But so far, Tim, I think out of all these deals, the only one who got overpaid was Nicholas Hague. It's the only one that I'm like, ugh, that's a lot for this guy, for what he does. So good for the GMs. They're kind of maybe pushing down salaries a little bit. But who knows? Marner could hit free agency and sign for 14, and we're just shocked. But so far, so good.
I mean, tomorrow is the day we're going to see these guys get way overpaid, and it'll be fun to react to that. So the last one here, Morgan Geekie signed a deal with my home team, the Boston Bruins, 6 years at $5.5 million. I think it's a pretty good deal. The reaction from the Bruins fan base and media is pretty strong. And I didn't realize this. I didn't follow the Bruins as closely as I usually do just because they weren't as good and I'm covering all the teams. But from December 1st on, there's only 3 players who have had more goals than Morgan Geekie. Pasternak, his line mate, Draisaitl, and Tage Thompson. Like, that's how good he was in the second half of the season. And I don't expect him to be, top 10, top 20 in goals, maybe ever again. But I think he's an underrated player that can kind of do everything pretty well. And the upside is there. And most importantly, Pasternak seems to like playing with him. So that's kind of, if all he does is just make Pasta happy and make him a better player, it will have been worth it. But he'll also contribute as well.
Yeah, hell of a player. This is a great contract. When we talked about the Bruins this year, it was Pasta, and then at the tail end of the year, it was Morgan Geekie. So it's a great deal by the Bruins. He's a good right shot left winger who's got a quick release, and he makes Pasta happy. And much like Edmonton with Connor McDavid, in Boston, that's your sole goal is to make Pasta happy. And you pair him up with this big body Geeky who's not afraid to get in the corners. He goes to the net, got a hell of a release. It's a good Robin to his Batman. They just need to find someone to play in the middle with these guys. That's the key. It can't be Zaka. It can't be Lindholm. It probably will be one of those two guys, but it'll be nice to have a nice skilled centerman to play with these guys because they're both really good. And Pasta, he is your goal scorer. Geeky doesn't need to get 50 goals. Like, he needs to be the Zach Hyman of that line. He needs to be the Matthew Nyes of that line. Get in the corner, muck it up, make a hit. Just facilitate the puck to those guys so they can make something happen. And then you bang in a rebound. Get back door and they'll feed you. You're not going to be the skill guy in that line. I think Morgan Geeky gets that, which is hard for a first liner to just resign himself to be just the bulldog of the line. You want to be the skill guy. You want to be the dangler. But it's so nice to see a kid who gets that. Now look at it. He's being rewarded for it. So good for the Bruins. They lock him up. And Geeky, gosh, fantasy draft him in the 3rd round, 4th round. He will be a 30-goal scorer for the next 4 or 5 years now. That's a great contract for him and the team. I'm getting sick of saying that, but it's the truth.
Yeah, speaking of the Bruins, so they just drafted Higgins the other night, and today he's skating at the rookie development camp already. Like, it's crazy the turnaround that these kids are asked to do, and they're all excited and they're all willing to do it. But that's like you've got to learn all this new stuff. And I get at some point hockey's just hockey, but that's a quite turnaround.
Yeah, well, gosh, imagine he's going to be first-line center, Tim. I'd be going anywhere Bruins told me to go. Hell yeah.
At what point, too, like, I know you did a couple right after college, right? You got invited to, was it the rookie training camp or the big one?
The rookie one. No, it was the big one. I was too old for the rookie one. Yeah, they give you a couple days, but yeah, I never got drafted, but that is a quick turnaround to just all of a sudden, because you're preparing for the draft, you're doing all the media, especially for a guy like him, and then to turn around and have to just jump on a plane and go to Boston and get geared up, new equipment, new faces, new everything. That's got to be a whirlwind for a kid like that.
Yeah. Okay, we'll keep an eye on this. The other quick hit I have here is that I'm sure you saw this. Alex Pietrangelo is dealing with some serious injuries, some of the nature of which are not being shared yet, but it's going to require multiple major surgeries this summer, which will result in him missing the entire season, 25-26. And someone at his age, I think he's 34, that could be his career, which is really sucks. So you hope for the best for him.
Yeah, you can make a joke about the LTIR, but yeah, that's too bad. This is one of the premier defensemen who, has played in the last 15 years. So it's tough. This is the last year for teams to abuse the cap rule and getting guys in the LTIR. So maybe we should just postpone the jokes. But if he does come back in the playoffs game 1, it's fair game and the gloves are off. But yeah, tough for him. Hopefully he heals up because, gosh, he's fun to watch when he's healthy for Team Canada, for the Vegas Golden Knights. It's tough. Gosh, these guys, they just go to battle, man. They really, really do. All right, let's move on. We got to obviously get to the farewells. This is Tim's last show. It was, like Tim said, I got to be happy about this. I'm not. It sucks. I got a good friend who's leaving the show. It's going to be weird without him. But, it was, I don't know what you had planned, Tim. I'll let you get your words in before I wrap it up.
Well, first of all, I was going to read from that old blog post. And people that have listening for a while kind of know that I wrote a blog post about John 12, 15 years ago, whatever, before I knew him, and just ripped him to shreds for his hit on Louis Eriksson. And I decided not to do that because I want to keep this positive. But I might share a couple snippets on Slack. So if you're not on the friend of the show and joining that Patreon, you should do that. But this is a bittersweet moment because I love dropping the gloves and I'm very proud of what we built and to be part of it. And like I said last week, this wasn't an easy decision. I am feeling a lot of feelings right now. And I think gratitude most of all. So thank you for all the listeners. I've gotten so many DMs, over the years, but especially the past few days since we broke the news, and it really means a lot, and especially to you guys in our friend of the show, Slack. And even to the people who have all written me in saying, hey, I'm a moron, or you called me an idiot for something I said in the show. And maybe you were right, but I love you guys too. Thank you to my family and friends and to Julia for all the support that you guys continue to provide. And then John, thank you to you. I mean, I've learned so much about the game of hockey, all the details, all the stuff in the room, all the way the league works, the way what the players deal with. And you've been very gracious to me and you've shown me a lot. You give me a lot of opportunities. And for someone that has been a lifelong hockey fan, and I used to write blog posts that no one ever read, I think being part of Dropping the Gloves has been a dream come true. So I put together a few words in my website that I'll be sharing later today or tomorrow that you can go check out if you're curious to read them, and give me a follow on Instagram and all that if you want to see what I'm up to. But this is an end of an era. It's very hard. Thank you all for being part of the journey, and I hope you'll keep listening because John's going to keep going, and I know he'll do great things with it.
Yeah. Okay. Might look a little different, everybody, just because if you're watching on YouTube, my computer died right as soon as Tim finished his little soliloquy and really nice, touching kind of exit speech. So, yeah, very strange. I was about to go into it and have my response, and now here we are. So it's like an hour later. I'm back in business. That's why it's a little bit different. But I just wanted to say thanks to Tim. It's been, yeah, it's been good, man. So, gosh, I don't get emotional. This is very strange. So I appreciate everything. I will continue to do this show. I'm excited to do it on my own. I'm going to do more interviews, try to be, a little more aware of what I say and not be so maybe quick with my mouth. Tim protected me a lot. So I appreciate that. All the best. And then we'll see you around. Anything else, Tim?
No, thank you for the kind words, and hopefully we'll be hanging out in Traverse City having a beer before long.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you stick with me, and we'll talk to you later. Cheers.